From classified assassinations to the hidden army walking among us right now, here are 10 of the wildest military operations that'll change your entire view of the world. Number 10. Operation Wrath of God. In 1970, a man named Michael Harari was appointed head of a special unit within Israel's intelligence service that specialized in assassinations. He was a very high-ranking officer who's been referred to as the Zionist James Bond. In 1972, when Palestinian militants murdered 11 Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympic Games, this was the man charged with tracking down each terrorist and killing them. It was known as Operation Wrath of God, and it was a straight-up murder and revenge plot. The assassination team consisted of 15 agents separated into 5 squads. There were assassins, logistic experts, agents who specialized in tracking and following targets, and a specialist in communications. Within just 9 months, Michael's special team had killed 6 of the terrorists. Not only that, but they had tracked them through Rome, Paris, Cyprus, and Athens. These people were literally assassinating victims on foreign soil, just like you see in the James Bond movies. If you think these shadow organizations don't exist, you're dreaming. This is a real thing that actually happened. And to be honest, the only reason we know about it today is because of a mistake that was made. The big issue came in 1973 when the team was in Norway and thought they had identified a key figure in the Olympic killings. They thought it was a person living and working as an ordinary waiter. They killed him and found out he had nothing to do with any of it. The Norwegian police arrested most of the team, but Michael Harari fled back to Israel without being caught. It soon came out what was going on, and there was international outrage. The operation was canceled. That is until 1979, when it was put back on and more people linked to the Munich murders were killed. Number 9. The mustard gas program. In 1943, during the height of World War II, somebody carved their name into the rock outside the Glenbrook Railway Tunnel in Australia under strange circumstances. 80 years later, his name is still there, serving as a horrifying reminder of a secret military operation in Australia involving deadly mustard gas. The currently unused railway tunnel was once one of 14 storage facilities in Australia used to hold poisonous mustard gas during the Second World War, even though it was banned worldwide after World War I because of its devastating effects. It was one of the reasons that the Geneva Protocol in 1925 prohibited using chemical warfare. But of course, there are no real rules when it comes to war. Australia was worried about Japan during World War II, especially after the Japanese invaded Singapore. With reports that they were using chemical warfare against the Chinese, the Australians needed to be prepared. So they stored huge amounts of mustard gas all around the country, just in case. It was a secret chemical warfare program that didn't come to light until much later, when some of the people involved in the project eventually disclosed what happened, though it wasn't until the contract expired. What contract is that, you ask? It was the one bounding them to secrecy for 50 years under the threat of criminal prosecution. Then in the 1990s, they were finally able to admit the dangerous secret. Number 8. Project Iceworm. Project Iceworm was one of those bizarre military operations that's almost too hard to believe. The project started after World War II when the US and Russia were stuck in the icy Cold War. Speaking of icy, the United States wanted a place to hide a small collection of nuclear missiles in case they needed to drop them on the Soviets. So the US created a base in Greenland to store nukes. Their proposed facility was to have a secret network of ice tunnels with missile silos built into them, all connected by rail cars. The project was disguised as an Arctic research center so as not to arouse suspicion. The site of the project was chosen, technicians and engineers were sent to Greenland, many tunnels were dug into the snow, an underground city was built, and a small town to house 200 soldiers was erected. But the site never really turned out to be much use and was abandoned in the mid-1960s. It wasn't even known to the public until 1997 when the Danish parliament revealed the project. That was the only reason the public found out about it. Then, when the Greenland ice sheet began melting much quicker than anticipated in the 2016s, scientists started to worry that the radioactive material still stuck in the ice in Greenland could leak into the ocean. As far as anyone knows, the problem of nuclear contamination has yet to be fixed. Number 7. The Hungarian Killer. Bela Kiss is one of the most horrific killers to ever come out of Hungary. He was also a soldier in World War I that has been the source of significant mystery. In 1914, he was 37 years old and running a successful tinsmith business. Then he was conscripted to fight in the war. In 1916, Kiss's landlord heard that he had been captured and was probably dead in Serbia. So they began preparing the house to be rented to someone else. At this point, the landlord began to get a little suspicious. There were strange metal drums inside the house. The landlord thought maybe they were used for storing oil, but the lids were soldered shut. It wasn't until the landlord punctured one of the lids and opened the drum that they realized something horrifying was going on. The drums were full of rotting human flesh. The landlord informed the police in Budapest. All the drums were opened and the bodies of young women were found, most of them strangled with rope and stuffed into the barrels naked. In the end, there were 30 dead women on the property. Bela Kiss was a serial killer. The army was notified and Kiss was detained in the hospital in Serbia, but he escaped, vanished, and was never seen again. Some believe he escaped to New York City. There were investigations to try and find the guy all the way until 1936, with rumors that Kiss was working as a janitor. However, he's never been found and is definitely dead by now. Number 6. The Mai Lai Massacre. The most unspeakable and horrific military operation in the history of the United States of America was during the Vietnam War. It's known as the Mai Lai Massacre, and it should honestly be considered a war crime. American soldiers entered the village of Mai Lai on March 16, 1968. There, they slaughtered and mutilated 500 people, also assaulting women and young children. And as if that weren't enough to be outraged about, the incident was covered up for a full year before the American press finally got hold of the story. It was actually the brutality of the military operation in Mai Lai that led a huge explosion of anti-war sentiment in the United States. After all, what's the point in fighting against communism if the people who are doing the fighting slaughter women and children indiscriminately and do heinous, unspeakable things to their bodies? But why did this senseless attack occur? Charlie Company, part of the 11th Infantry Brigade, got news that there were enemies in control of the village, so they were sent there on a mission of search and destroy. The orders came from Army commanders. What were these orders? The soldiers were told that every single living person in the area should be considered Viet Cong or a Viet Cong sympathizer. They were to destroy the village and every last person in it. When they arrived, they found nothing but women and children. Nonetheless, they were ordered to kill them all. According to History.com, not a single shot was fired at Charlie Company throughout the slaughter. Does hearing this story make you less supportive of the military? It's clearly a horrific incident, but was it just a tragic mistake on the orders of the commanders? Tell me what you think down in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to American Eye if you haven't already for more intense videos just like this one. Number 5. Kitten Spies. There were all kinds of strange operations being done by the CIA in the 60s and 70s. One of the strangest by far was when they experimented on cats. It turned out to be a pretty strange operation. After all, cats don't typically do what they're told. Still, the CIA thought that if trained properly, cats could become spies. The idea was that a cat could be wired to record conversations and it would never be busted because nobody ever thought a cat would be a spy. It didn't make sense, which is why it made so much sense to the CIA. It was known as Operation Acoustic Kitty, and it was a total failure. According to former assistant to the CIA director Victor Marchetti, the idea was to slit the cat open, stuff batteries into it, sew it back up, turn it into a living listening device, then let it go into Soviet territory to be a secret agent. Instead, Victor claims the operators made a monstrosity. It cost about $20 million, and in the end, the only thing that the CIA learned was that they couldn't train cats. Number 4. The Zone of Silence. In Mexico, just over a mile from San Ignacio, there's a place known as the Silent Zone, or locally, Zona de Silencio. This place has been compared to the Bermuda Triangle. Legends say that radio waves are unable to be transmitted in the Silent Zone because of either aliens or some kind of unexplainable Earth energy. But the truth of why the Silent Zone is so silent is quite a bit stranger. There was a secret military operation in July of 1970 in which a rocket lost control, fell into Mexican airspace, and landed in the desert of Durango, very far from its intended destination. The rocket had a payload of cobalt-57, an extremely radioactive element. The rocket was eventually found and retrieved, as was the contaminated soil. But locals apparently enjoyed the attention because they perpetuated the rumors and myths until they had created a legend that to this very day brings curious tourists out to the Silent Zone in hopes of seeing aliens. There aren't any aliens, but there are the remains of a mysterious military operation gone wrong. Number 3. The Pentagon's Secret Army. The largest undercover military force in the entire world has been created by the Pentagon, and it all happened in the last 10 years or so. According to Newsweek, there are at least 60,000 people who are part of the Pentagon's Secret Army, with the majority of them working ordinary jobs with secret identities. Apparently, these secret soldiers carry out assignments both at home and internationally under civilian cover. Sometimes they hide in private businesses, some of them work in big companies, all of them are secret. A lot of them also operate in cyber warfare. The exclusive report from Newsweek was based on a long investigation spanning 2 years and looking through hundreds and even thousands of job postings and resumes. This is a vast network, a clandestine force whose members participate in everything from manufacturing to the falsification of documents. It's not exactly clear how many people participate in the secret and mysterious operations or what the end game is, but as it turns out, anyone could be a part of this hidden force, even your neighbor. Do you know anyone who you think might be a part of this hidden arm of the military? It could be someone you least expect. Number 2. Secret Laos War. From 1964 to 1973, there was a secret military operation being carried out in Laos. Laos has actually been bombed by the United States more than any other country in the world. This tiny landlocked nation was the scene of a covert attempt by the CIA to take power away from the Communist Party at the time, Pathet Lao. The group was allied with both the North Vietnamese and the Soviet Union. Even though the country was officially neutral, it was a fierce battleground during the Cold War, with American bombers dropping an estimated 2 million tons of cluster bombs. That's more than every bomb dropped in World War II by either side combined. Laos shared a border with China and Vietnam. It was a key location for keeping communism away from the rest of Southeast Asia. The bombing campaign centered on the Ho Chi Minh Trail into Vietnam. Because there was no way for the US to initiate a ground war, after all, they didn't even win the Vietnam War using ground forces, all they could do was drop as many bombs as possible to cut off communist supplies running into Vietnam, while at the same time disrupt whatever was going on in Laos. The US sent bombers from covert mission bases in Thailand. At the peak of the bombings, they were sending an entire plane load of explosives every 8 minutes, 24 hours every day for a full 9 years before they eventually stopped. Needless to say, pretty horrific. Number 1. Daniel Boone. The USS Daniel Boone was one of the first fully functioning submarines that could launch deadly ballistic missiles. It employed the use of a cold launch system which ejected missiles from the launch tube without using the engines of the missiles. The engines would only kick in after the missile had cleared the water, which made the submarine one of the deadliest in the world. It operated from between 1962 and 1994, going on many missions, not all of them likely known to us. But what's even more interesting than this deadly naval vessel is that it was the first of its kind to be named in honor of Daniel Boone. Who was Daniel Boone? He was born in 1734 in Pennsylvania. He was the first of the British colonists to try and build a permanent settlement in Kentucky, but was chased away in 1773 by angry Native Americans. The Native Americans even kidnapped and murdered Boone's son, forcing him and the other explorers to return to North Carolina. However, he went back 2 years later in 1775 and blazed a trail from Virginia to central Kentucky, building a path that would facilitate the first permanent colonial settlements anywhere in Kentucky. Boone went on to live a long life, dying in September of 1820, and now there's a deadly submarine to commemorate his life. How do you feel about all these secret operations? And what kind of operations do you think are happening right now? Let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe and come back for more amazing videos right here on American Eye.